Welcome to one of the last sessions on the last day of the conference. So thank you all for being here, because that takes a little bit extra commitment, especially since Tableau already sent out well, you guys have had a really good conference, so make sure you fill out your evaluation. And I went, wow, that makes me feel so valued and special, because I haven't even given mine yet. But welcome and thank you for being here. This is actually one of the things that I'm particularly passionate about, and it's one of the things that when all of the other speakers that we've attended sessions, they've talked about, the kinds of things that they do and all of that stuff. Well, I'm a 36 years of doing compensation and benefits and anything else that anybody didn't want to do in HR. And I'm also a statistician, and I've done work writing a course in quantitative analysis for World at Work. And so I have a really kind of unique background that makes this sort of perfect, that I get to do Tableau and do things for our clients all the time, and yet combine it with my expertise in HR. So this has been a really interesting combination, and one of the areas that I feel like is really underrepresented with how people utilize Tableau. HR just hasn't got the same numbers of people that attend as you see throughout the conference from all the other things. When they have a meetup for finance, there are thousands of people there, and HR last year in New Orleans, I think we had like 40 people there, and it was so poorly attended they didn't even have one this year. So I appreciate you all being here, because this is kind of a cool thing that we're doing, utilizing Tableau to help you facilitate discussions about pay equity. I apologize for the colors. It's actually really pretty. It's kind of turquoise, and then there will be some red ones, but there's something going on with the VGA cord or something, and it's sort of purple. So, and I'm not really sure what will go on, but when it comes to the live demo of what we've done, that we know is in the right colors. So, thank you very much for being here. Real quickly, I've introduced myself, but let me also tell you about the company I work for, which is PayScale. It's headquartered in Seattle. I work remotely out of the Denver office, and even more remotely because I work from home all the time, which is kind of cool about using Tableau. You get to work from home. It's kind of nice. But we have a sort of two sides of our company. One side is you may be familiar with. It's called our crowdsourced data, and people log into PayScale and they give us their salary information and any information about their jobs and responsibilities and things like that. So we have this huge data source on one side of our organization, that thousands and millions and billions of rows of data that people voluntarily fill out again and again and again and again and again, so it's always fresh. Then we have another half of our organization, which are software as a service products to help people administer their compensation program. So on that side, we have millions and millions and millions of rows of data from all these companies loading in their human resource data into MarketPay, so that they can then do their analysis and their market data. So it's kind of cool to be the person that gets to play with all of the data. And there's a lot of data. And we have a lot of what our marketing people call logos. So we have a huge amount of organizations that work with MarketPay. And basically we provide tools to our clients to help them dig into their data and their HR data. And one of the things that we do, which is particularly cool, is that our reporting functionality, so that, because once you put the information in to MarketPay, you want to be able to get it out. we have Tableau server fully integrated with our reporting. So our clients never have to worry about joining things together or taking the data and linking it up with Tableau. It's already there, it's already fully integrated. And every time they send in new HR data, it refreshes automatically any of their Tableau reports and visualizations. So it's a really happy confluence that came together, that we've got all the right people, all the right information at a critical time in human resources when we're dealing with pay equity, and we were able to come up with our pay equity reports. Now, before I get started in this, there are a couple of people that are really important that you know. We've got Angie here, and she's keeping market pay working because market pay times out about every 10 minutes for security purposes. And it's particularly frustrating because if you're working in the Tableau report writer side and you're going gangbusters, if market pay does not recognize the clicks that you do in Tableau. So she's in another part of market pay right now, keeping it going so that when I do the live part that you'll be able to see it and it won't be shut down. So this is Angie, and then Ryan in here, and we are your Tableau team that does all of the client-facing work. And then two of the most important people are also sitting in the front row, and that's Austin and Chris, and they are with Boulder Insight. And when we get to the live thing of what we've done, they did a lot of really heavy lifting, particularly Austin, who's a whiz at this, because I'll show you when we get there, it was really pretty ugly. Now, how this began was because of, and I use the metaphor of the old man riding a bicycle in Lijiang, China. When I worked for the Nature Conservancy, I got to travel all over the world and figure out compensation. And we were in Lijiang, China, and it was very rural where we were. And there's this old man riding a bicycle with all of the wood that he's chopped down. And of course, the Nature Conservancy, we were trying to keep them from chopping down all the wood. And he had all this wood strapped with cords to the back of his bike, and he's riding along back to his village to heat up his home, and he's talking on a cell phone. Because what China did is they skipped over that whole part where they put up telephone poles and telephone wires, and they went from not having any telephones to going straight, skipping all that intermediate step and going to where they all have cell phones, even in the most rural parts of China. Well, that's kind of what's happened in HR relative to the use of some of the advanced analytics. Harvard Business Review just recently did a study that showed that HR has actually passed some of the other internal departments in their use of advanced analytics, because what happened was that they weren't using anything, and then the analytics kept going and going. You've got wonderful tools like Tableau at your disposal, and they went, so now HR just said, okay, I'm gonna skip this whole, I'm gonna do everything by hand and do some averages and a few medians, and going into some real advanced analytics. So we're kind of excited that that's where we ended up. Plus, right now, there's a huge focus on pay equity. huge monster focus on it. So that's how it started. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes on why you need to address pay equity, and I'm sure most of you already know this, but I'm just going to go through it quickly. The first and obvious one is legal compliance. Yes, you want to mitigate against lawsuits. So sometimes you do analytical reports just to make sure you're not going to be doing it, you're not doing anything wrong. Addressing pay equity probably aligns with your organization's core values, and because it's the right thing to do. Now, why we took on this project is because we figured out 38% of employers plan to conduct a gender or racial pay equity analysis or both in 2019, which means probably 38% of our clients are wanting to do that, so that could be an opportunity for us. Plus, our clients are set up to use this product. Like I said, it's fully integrated in with the reporting, so we've got all that data already there. We just have to give them the report so that they can use it. Some information that I'm sure you've seen. These come from our PayScale pay equity report, which is really wonderful. And at the end, I've got a website that you can go to if you want to find out more from the report. But from our 2019 study, what's called uncontrolled pay gap is 79 cents on the dollar. And that's just the median salary for men compared to the median salary for women. If you control for job duties and responsibilities and qualifications, it goes to 98 cents on the dollar. And then we're going to show how we tied that all in a little bit. I'm not going to worry too much about you being able to read all the little fine print, but the gender gap, suffice it to say, exists within industries. What is interesting is that the tech industry does not have a gender pay gap. It's dollar for dollar. Women and men are paid the same for the same duties and responsibilities. The problem is if you look at how many women there are to how many men, and only 29% of the tech employees are women. So for those situations where you have women, there is not a pay gap. It's just that there aren't very many women. Now this one is really impossible to read, and I hope it's in purple. It's even worse. But just look at the arrows that I'm going to do. So this goes from, you actually have to look at it going from top to bottom. So individual contributor to manager, supervisor, then to director, and then to executive. And what it shows is that, how the breakouts are relative to that. Now, first, let's put the white men in, okay? So that's where the pay is for the white men. And then let's look at the trend for minority women, which shows not only is there a gap, which is the distance between the two arrows, but that as you get further up in the organization, the gap gets bigger, which is a lot of fun. Now this one is just a fun fact, just so you know. Employers do not value degrees equally among men and women. And as somebody who has an MBA, I'm looking at the bottom line where master's degree, the Master's of Business Administration at the bottom. It has the widest gap between women MBAs and men MBAs in terms of their salaries. So just a little fun fact to keep in the back pocket, which is maybe why none of my children went and got their masters or whatever. Anyway, legal landscape is the huge #1 reason. Everything is changing. All these states are changing and adopting new rules and regulations. So that's a huge reason why we did this. So basically, I love this slide. The goal of this analysis is because everyone just wants things to be fair. It starts really young. There's a fairness thing in there. That's all people want. So we tackled this. This is actually, you can tell how weird the colors are because that's actually a Rubik's Cube. So I'm going to run through quickly how this worked out with how we approach the pay equity analysis. So I used the 5 steps of model building, which I know everybody's familiar with, and then compare it to what we were doing. So the first step, gather the data. And that was kind of cool because we already have it. It's already loaded in the client site. Then you analyze the data. Well, that's what our project is. And then you group the data. So we used filters and actions in order to help our clients be able to drill in further. Interpret the results. This is where we kind of step back a little. We say, we'll kind of sort of help you interpret the results, but we're going to give you the results and let you do it, because then we're stepping on that fine line of telling you what you should do or not. And then communicate the results, which means make it look good. And that's where these two guys came into, especially, is helping us do that. So our first report that we did, there were 2 reports that are part of our analysis. And I think this is really important because for most organizations, you need 2 reports. You don't realize you need 2 reports, but you really do. The first one is descriptive statistics. This is what your managers, your executives want to see. This is where you kind of poke around and look at what is going on in the organization. And the second one, which is the multivariate regression, is what you use when you have to talk to lawyers and auditors and things like that, people like that. All right, so I said that it takes a village, and behind the scenes we needed to have our sales and marketing people. They're a necessary evil because we are a revenue generating business, so you got to involve sales and marketing. Development and engineering, because they are the ones that both fully integrate Tableau in with the report writer and the programming for our multivariate regression, which is done in Python, but it's done on a separate server. So people that log into, our clients that log into MarketPay, then log into the Tableau server to get their reports. And for the multivariate regression, it goes one more server beyond that. So we have really wonderful development and engineering people. And then you met Ryan and Angie, my internal Tableau team, and Boulder Insight. Okay, so the first, yeah, we're not quite there yet, but as long as it's working, that's good. So the first one that we're going to talk about is the descriptive statistics report. And in order to do this, we create a receiving report on the client side. And then we publish the desktop version to the client side through Tableau server. And then we adjust it so that it all hooks up properly. Some people use our we have a standard field for gender. Others prefer to use other parts, you know, other things, so we have to tweak that. And we get very happy clients. So let's take a look at that. There we go. Thank you. You're going to have to do it again in a short time. All right, we have to put the glasses on, sorry. Where did do you have my, oh, it's right here. My mouse. Oh, no, 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 no. I knew it. You know, this always happens. Okay, so I do have a picture of that, but that's not right. Here, you can get it to work.
I'll rerun it while you show the picture.
And then we'll talk about that in just a second. So we'll go ahead and talk about the all best laid plans, you know. All right, so we'll go ahead as she gets that coming back up. We'll go on from that, the descriptive statistics. Oh, you got it? Yay. Okay. Thank you, Angie. All right. So we have a series of dashboards that comprise the overall report for pay equity. And basically at the top it tells you the overall situation. If it's turquoise, it means men are paid more than women. If it's orange, it means women are paid more than men. And you can choose between median pay and average pay, depending on what works in your particular organization. And then we show, the breakout in terms of how many people are men and women and what that turns out to be an average. We have a number of possible reasons why there might be a pay gap, and we include that in there so that people can analyze, if it's how long they've been at their current organization, how long they've been in the current role, and that's all calculated off of things that are commonly stored in your HRIS, and it's just put into market pay. And then we break it out by major groups. Now, this is the part that gets semi-custom because every client does things a little differently or wants to see things a little differently. Maybe they have different companies or different stores or something like that they want to utilize. And so we set these all up, and these are all actions so that if you say, I want to look at finance, what's going on in finance? We're getting the average salary is $56.09, it's 78 cents on the dollar. I can click in there and then all of the data will change to show how that breaks out and all of the other information changes. And then if you want to further drill in on a grade or whatever, you can do that. This by itself allows most clients to do that rudimentary, are we discriminating against women, or is there a pay gap there? Now, there's also, we have one for the UK. The UK does have a specific way that they like to have their data reported. They use these quartiles, lowest earnings, lower to middle, things like that. So we set that up for them as well so that they could look at that. But then we allow people to compare side by side, because what usually happens is you're looking at, well, what's happening in finance, what's happening in HR, so we let them compare side by side. And then we also have my own little quirk in here, which is, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the difference between what's called percent difference versus the actual pay gap. So pay gap is that we're paying women 81 cents on the dollar to men, but if you went to give if you took a budget of 19% and gave it all to the women, it wouldn't be enough because you're actually needing to look at what's a different number in the denominator so that you can take action on it. So to take action, you'd actually need 20.8% in order to bring women to the same pay as men. So we provide both calculations for people to utilize, and we let them drill down into their employee data as well. So anytime they click on any of this, they get to the employee information, and they can look person by person. And usually, you know who the person is, that's throwing it all off. And then we have a special one, the low range penetration, which is another way that you might explain why there are differences in pay. And that is, maybe they're all low in the range. Maybe we just hired a bunch of women into this position, and so they're currently all low in the range. So you can play with the threshold and change that to 20% or, take it further down. And then it changes all of the rest of these too. And you can also break it out by just comparing the low range penetration to the high range penetration. And that's how you look for anomalies. So if I set this at 20%, so I'm looking to see the 20%, women are comprising about 41% of that lower 20%. So you're looking for things that are a little bit higher. But compared to men, it's not that far off. And you might come down here and look at the ethnicity and go, oh, look at the American Indian or Alaska Native is 81% or low in the bottom 20% of their ranges, but there are only 16 people, so you would not pay a whole lot of attention to that. So this is what we did for our descriptive statistics. And here, I'll give this back, Angie, so that you can keep it going so I can do the multiple regression. Okay, so as usual, the client wanted more. You know, we gave that out and everybody went, okay, that's great. But we'd like more that has the statistical validity part of it put into that. And we had one client in particular who was facing an external audit of their gender pay gap under the new Massachusetts pay equity laws. So there was a little bit of a need to move a little faster on that. So we incorporated multivariate regression analysis. Our engineering team was fantastic because they did have to put in another server to do the Python programming. And we built a sophisticated way to perform multiple regression live on the client site with the client data. Now, just so you know, the descriptive statistics one that I showed you runs on an extract because of the median calculations. So we can set it up so that the clients can get those extracts refreshed every whatever they want to. They could even do it daily if they wanted to. But we try to not do that. But at least Saturday night, we'll update their extracts. But this one runs live. This one runs constantly whenever they want to run it. You need to have really savvy clients. You need to have people that would attend the Tableau conference. You know, people that understand what's going on with multiple regression. And what we do with this is we help them pick the variables that help explain why there are differences in pay. So you start with, everybody isn't paid the same. If everybody was paid the same, then there's no problem. But we acknowledge that everyone is not paid the same. So what variables, reasonable, rational, defensible variables, can be used to explain away why we pay people differently? And we have to include gender in there, because what you want to do is show that gender is not statistically contributing to it. So it's a little counterintuitive, but that's what we end up doing. We also have to do some coding. We have to work with the clients to get the variables coded a certain way. It has to be binary, and last time I talked to somebody in HR, there are 24 different things that could be put in for gender now. Now, not all companies do that, but if you have more than 2, then we kind of need the client to figure out how they want to code that. Usually 0, or, well, 1 is protected class. I used to say men are 0s, and then that kind of didn't go over well. I don't know why. But if we code the men as 0s, the women as 1, or the protected class as 1, you know, we have to put that in there. We're working on one right now for ethnicity to take it to the next level, ethnicity, but ethnicity gets like 400,000 times more complex because of how you have to code the various ethnicities. So that one's going to take a little bit longer, and so they let you do a presentation for if you're selected to be a speaker for Tableau, and then you can't do it for 3 years. So by the next 3 years, I might have the ethnicity and we could talk about it. So we're going to look at things like the predicted value of pay versus the actual value of pay. We're going to talk about R squared and how good is the model and how good are the variables. We'll look at the predictors. And then we talk to them about how to interpret the report. And most importantly, the thing we always stress to our clients is it does not tell you what to do. It just tells you these are the variables that are the most important to explain away what's going on with your pay. So this is what we do behind the scenes on this. We meet with the client because they're the ones that are going to tell us the variables. I can make suggestions. For example, the number one explainer of pay in an organization is hierarchy. So it's usually something like a grade or a career level or something like that, some measure of hierarchy. And experience. Experience is a really huge important variable. So we usually try to get them to put those 2 in, but then it all depends on the particular client. So our our client that was in Massachusetts, the university, they use school. Because, you know, what I call plug-and-play jobs, which are the accountants, the admin assistants, things like that, those jobs actually got paid differently if they were in the medical school or the law school than if they were in the business school or the general ed. So school was an important variable. We've had a grocery client that used geographic things as a variable. So everybody's going to have something different that they need to include as a variable. So that's an important one. And then we need to make sure they correspond to what is legally defensible and what is logical for the organization. Logical for the organization is good. Legally defensible, sometimes, you know, it's just well, they were hired by the previous CEO is not a legally defensible variable. So, although I did have someone try to do that. They said, okay, we've gone through 4 mergers. So if they were with the first merger or the second merger, like, no, not gonna work on that one. This sounds obvious, but Angie can attest that this is a huge one. The client has to make sure all the variable data is loaded into MarketPay, because if it's not there, we can't do it. Because we don't get the ability to take the data that is sent and join it and hook it all together like you do in Tableau. We don't get the chance to do that here. We could do it outside, but that's not how it works, because then when it goes into MarketPay, it would blow up. So. And then we build the receiving report on the client site. We build the proprietary calculations for the regression. It's custom for every client. We can accommodate up to 7 variables right now. We could do 15, but I don't like to tell people that, because then they'll use it. And I have to put this in here. We load these into the very professional dashboard that Boulder Insight built us. And we'll talk a little bit about that, because it's pretty ugly what we had to do. Publish the completed dashboard back to the client site. And then we have to tweak things, because you always have to tweak things. And then it's live on their site. And we have many meetings with the clients to go over how to read it and how to interpret the results. And we have another super happy client. All right, so now I'm going to switch again. That's okay. Thank you, Angie. Let me put this on a full screen here. Okay, so this is the main dashboard for this. What we do is we create individual dashboards of each variable relative to base salary. So, you know, you look at, base versus gender, and you don't expect to find a relationship, and there isn't, which is good. By just putting one of those simple trend lines, reference lines on there, you can get the R² and all the relevant information that you need, which is really nice. Base versus midpoint, like I said, the #1 predictor. You can tell this is going to be a huge factor, and then we have experience and so forth. And then we build the multiple regression. The important things up at the top, and we had this buried, and Austin pointed out to us very rightly that, well, we should probably put the really critical stuff up at the top. So you can see how many employees and what the R² is. If it goes below 30 employees, we don't show any data, because we don't want people making decisions off of wonky data. We build in whatever little filters they want to subdivide their data. We put in the legend. This is done on my test database, so it only has gender, midpoint, years in job, and prior experience. And by the way, any of you doing HR or pay equity back at your office, I'll give you a little helpful hint that we were able to get from a major compensation and pay a gap consultant person who has defended lots of organizations is that there is something that the courts have accepted as a reasonable calculation or approximation of prior years of experience. And that is, you take their birth date minus today's date to get their age. You take the hire date minus today's date to get the years they've had with your organization. You subtract the two, and then subtract either 22 or 18, depending on whether your workforce is primarily college educated or high school educated. And that gives you an approximation of prior years of experience that is considered valid legally when you're doing your analytical work. So that's a freebie. It is, as those of you that have worked with HR, you know, this is not, that's like a whole part of your brain is going, but wait a minute, you don't know if it's relevant prior experience or anything like that. It's close enough, and it works in legal things, so that we put that in there. And then down here, I know, we worked really long and hard on how to best show this. This is not a trend line or any sort of a trend chart. What it shows is actual values versus predicted values. So actual salary versus the predicted value given the model. And we hooked it together with lines because when you just use little dots or little, the little bars or something like that, it's really hard to read. This way, if you hover over it in the tooltip, you can see predicted and the regular value. So, but that's not the cool part. The cool part is right in here. We've got all the statistics over here, but this is the part that you need to explain things. So I did this off of, I think it's all IT people. So we have a drop-down box and you can choose. Is this IT? No, you switched it. Okay. All right. Okay, hold on, because I want to show the IT one, because that's a particularly cool one. That one?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. So this one we picked all the IT groups in here, infrastructure management, et cetera. We picked all of those particular departments. Okay. And when you look over here, you've got your coefficients, which, we could talk about how to interpret that. But the most important thing is to come over here to the predicted values for the t-test. And the way you interpret these is counterintuitive. So everybody knows that r squared, you want to drive that up high to say that's a good model. So we've got a good model here at 84%. But counterintuitively, the predictive values here, what you want is your good variables to have a predicted value of close to 0, if not 0. And if you want a variable to look like it's a bad variable, not something that's contributing to your model, you want it to have a higher p. And I know there's a whole discussion on what should be, what that amount should be. The University in Massachusetts went with 0.1. Other people will go with 0.05. But so what you can see here is the second variable is midpoint. And the probability that you got a coefficient due to anything, including chance, anything other, is 0. So that means it's a really solid, good variable. So we know midpoint is really good. We know experience is pretty good. This one is not. This is the prior experience. That's just because I based it off of a calculation that was already here, so that doesn't matter. But look at gender. There is a 44% probability that you got any answer for gender due to chance or random. So it's not a good variable, and that you can say for IT. So when you're running this analysis, you can say for my IT group, gender is not an issue. Statistically insignificant part of the analysis. So going with the multiple regression is really, really awesome. And it took a lot of extra work and everything, but it gets you these answers so that you can look at those and be able to say, uh-oh, no matter what I do, how much I subdivide it, I can break it by grade, and I break it, and grade is always good because you want, for pay equity, you want everybody that's in the same, doing the same kinds of job duties and responsibilities, so the same grade, to be having no pay equity issues. And if you keep coming up with 0, 0, 0, 0 for gender, that means gender is most assuredly having an impact on it. Now, this is where the work that Austin did, and Austin, you should stand up because he just was incredible. What the result is, just so you know, if you try this on your own and you use Python to come up with the multivariate regression, understand that the output is one great big box of strings of data. One big box. And there's no way around it. You can see all this information, but for the client to use it, they had to take, they would take screenshots of that box, and then they would hand enter the data into an Excel spreadsheet. And so that just didn't make any sense at all. But to go through this big, giant box and turn it into all these pieces was this mongo huge amount of work. And it involves, 70 different sheets and lots of other little things. So, Austin, how many months of your life did that take? But he did a huge amount of work, and it is great. And our clients are super happy because this is what you want to get to. This is the part that you need to do. And so then they can keep working away and not get out of market pay and not have to use an Excel spreadsheet, so that they can keep doing their analysis over and over and over and look for where there are issues. All right, so now I'm going to switch back. Now I'm done. You're done. Yeah, I'm done with that. All right. So again, like I said, we have a lot of success stories, but in particular, the University in Massachusetts, they passed thanks to their analysis, and the auditor was particularly pleased with all of the printouts from the pay equity multiple regression model. And actually, we had to train the auditor how to read it, but that's okay. It's like, really? You're going to be auditing? Anyway, we have a multinational food products company that makes lots and lots of chocolate bars. And they use this for both the US and the UK, and they were using it as a preventative analysis that they were doing. So basically, we started off with, here is what the uncontrolled pay gap is, and this is the controlled pay gap, taking into account job duties and responsibilities. And we went from these basic overarching numbers to having a descriptive statistics report with multiple dashboards, and then a multivariate regression analysis report that the clients could use. And we are continuing to expand and improve on these. Like I said, we're going to be adding ethnicity, which is its own little problems, but we want to put both ethnicity and gender, because as you saw with some of those beginning graphs that I showed, it goes together. You know, women of color and have the biggest pay gap. So I left room at the end of this so that I could answer any questions, but before that, I wanted to talk about this. It's called The Emotional Journey of Creating Anything Great, and it's from John Saddington. And I like this as a closing slide because contrary to popular belief, all of us in this room and this conference know that analyzing data is not just clinical and dispassionate, it is emotional, and that using Tableau to create something great is a journey. So I really like this one. I love it because it starts with, this is the best idea this will be fun. This is harder than I thought. This sucks, I have no idea what I'm doing. And then it comes back up on the other side saying, well, maybe it's gonna work and it might work out pretty well. And then you come up on the other side to success. And we're really happy with where we've ended up on this, and be happy to talk to anybody about that and answer any questions. And thank you for listening to how we built something useful and timely using Tableau, and for taking time on your last day of Tableau to come attend this. So any questions? Yes. My personal response is that as a statistician is that I would look at it. I would take all of that into account, because you can then, instead of making a generalization that this is wrong everywhere, you could isolate where that is. And that's why in the descriptive statistics, I would put things in like, you know, executive, if they have that in there or something, so you could see if there are issues going on within different executives, so forth. When I worked at one organization, we had a man, Jean Louis, who was an executive in IT, who routinely gave his salary increases. He gave 1% more of a salary increase. So if everybody was rated a 3, he gave the men 1% more than the women, because he says, after all, they are primary breadwinners. No, but using really basic regression, you can figure that out. You can find that out. So yes, I would look for it. Make sure you're covered by the overarching umbrella from legal, so that your information isn't, your research and your reports aren't discoverable. But yeah, I would absolutely investigate all of that so you can eliminate any of that before you do your actual. Yes, as putting them in, putting like executive name as a variable or recoding it so you've got executive name, that's iffy to put that into a multiple regression. But if you use descriptive statistics and try to ameliorate it beforehand, you should always try to find and tweak, you know, find those things out before you get to the regression. Absolutely, yes.
Did you decide to go with multiple regression instead of some other predictive analytics because of its predictability?
Exactly, yes. He asked if we decided to go with multiple regression instead of other predictive analytics because of interpretability. Because exactly, the World at Work, which is a compensation organization that's widely accepted within the compensation world, that's what they teach. And so people are a little more used to that. So that's why, yeah, absolutely. Yes, you had a question.
When you were talking about ethnicity, like, do you try to do anything like regarding on the more global level? Because each country's got different things that you can capture or not capture, and I'm sure it's different.
Yeah, he's talking about ethnicity, and this is primarily U.S. based for this particular analysis. But like you said, we got it for the UK, and we would tweak it for the particular countries. But right now, the only country that we've got good data on how to report was for the UK. But if we get it for other countries, we'd be happy to figure it out so that our clients can utilize it. Absolutely. And then, yes, the differences between, because then, like in Australia, the indigenous people scenario is a little different than what it would be here and so forth. Absolutely. Yes?
You looked at gender and ethnicity. Did you look at disability?
We did not. She asked if we looked at disability, and we did not. We did not look at ADA kinds of things at all. We stuck with just right now, everybody's focused on gender, and that's what we did, and that's why we're going to add ethnicity. But I don't know how many people track the disability. I don't know. Does anybody know? Does anybody keep track of it?
I think you have to ask once every 5 years or so, but if people don't respond, I don't think that there's any,
Yeah. I don't know, but that's really good. Thank you. Yes? Okay. Yes. You're absolutely right, and we do have standard reports that we put out there that all clients can use that play off of the standard reports that are in market pay. But you're absolutely right. We have an internal way that we track everybody that's on pay equity, and when we make changes, we have to go in and make changes to each of those because they are set up independently, and that's what Ryan and Angie do as well. Is they go in and they tweak all of those things because it is particular. Yes, it's probably not as scalable as it could be. Bless their hearts, yes. My mother-in-law and father-in-law are from Texas, and she used to say, "That dress looks really horrible on you, bless your heart." What? Wait, was that a... Yes, yes.
There's been some recent studies showing that the inequality of pay is more turned towards like women and children who are a family. Do you do any sort of catalog the family size or children or not?
Ooh. So the question is this, that there has been research that shows that having a family impacts the pay for women. And we have research on that's in the, oh shoot, that's what I was supposed to do, don't let me forget. This website here, this is where our pay equity information is. If you want to go check it out, because it's free, you can go look at all of the data, and it's refreshed every year. But we do work in that area, and they do analysis on it, but it's on a global overarching basis. We've never really broken that down, but Ryan's taking notes. Yes?
For some of the regression coefficients that you have on there, my experience, sometimes things like tenure are positively related, sometimes they're negatively but significantly related. In your experience, do you recommend including that in there, whether or not it's positively or negatively?
Yeah. Yeah, because if it can explain it, it's a rational, logical, even if it's negatively skewed, it's still a valid variable as opposed to which merger you were part of.
I'm glad you said that.
See, and that also, because the reason why you can't exclude it and you have to include it is because luckily the statistics doesn't care whether it's positively or negatively, it cares how good they go together and how much they go together. So even, because you could mess up your coding on some things and have your executives coded a certain way and your lower levels, your career levels, and it could be backwards so that the line goes this way, but it's still a really valid variable. So, anything else? Don't forget, thank you all for coming, and don't forget to fill out the evaluation. And I really appreciate your attention today. Thank you.